You know that moment when someone calls you clingy and it feels like a punch to the gut? Well, buckle up, because what happened next turned my entire world upside down. And trust me, karma has a twisted sense of humor. My name is Aaliyah, and 6 months ago, I thought I had everything figured out. I was working as a senior recruitment specialist at TechFlow Solutions, one of the city's most prestigious consulting firms. I had my dream apartment, a solid career trajectory, and what I believed was the love of my life, Marcus. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus was everything I thought I wanted. Tall, charming, with those perfect dimples that made my heart skip every single time he smiled. We'd been together for 2 years, and I genuinely believed we were building something real. I should have seen the red flags, but love makes you blind to the obvious, doesn't it? It started with small comments. "You're always texting me," he'd say with that laugh that used to make me melt but now makes my skin crawl. "Can a guy have some space?" Then it escalated. "You're being clingy again, Aaliyah. It's not attractive." Clingy. That word became my nightmare. Every time I wanted to spend time together, every time I called just to hear his voice, every time I showed him affection, I was being clingy. I started second-guessing every text message, analyzing every interaction, wondering if I was being too much. The worst part? I actually started believing him. I convinced myself that maybe I was too intense, too needy, too much. So I pulled back. I gave him the space he claimed he needed. I stopped initiating conversations, stopped planning dates, stopped being myself just to avoid that dreaded label. But pulling back only made things worse. The distance I created became a chasm I couldn't cross. Marcus grew colder, more distant, and I felt like I was losing him, which, looking back, was probably exactly what he wanted. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in March. I remember it so clearly because it was the day everything I thought I knew about my relationship crumbled into dust. I had planned a surprise dinner for his birthday. Nothing extravagant, just his favorite pasta dish, some candles, and a small gift I'd been saving up for. I spent hours in the kitchen, making sure everything was perfect. I even bought that expensive wine he mentioned loving once. When he walked through the door, instead of the smile I expected, his face fell like I'd just ruined his entire life. "What is this?" he asked, looking around at the romantic setup like it was a crime scene. "It's your birthday dinner," I said, my voice already starting to shake. I wanted to do something special for Aaliyah. We talked about this. This clingy behavior has to stop. I can't breathe in this relationship. The word hit me like a slap. After everything I'd done to give him space, after all the ways I'd diminished myself to make him comfortable, I was still clingy for wanting to celebrate his birthday. "I'm not being clingy," I whispered. But even as I said it, I felt that familiar doubt creeping in. "I just wanted to... Look, I can't do this anymore." He ran his hands through his hair, avoiding my eyes. "This whole thing, it's too much. You're too much." My heart stopped. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we're done, Aaliyah. I need someone who can give me space. Someone who doesn't need constant validation. Someone who isn't so..." He paused, searching for the word that would destroy me completely. Someone who isn't so desperate. Desperate. The word echoed in my head as I watched him grab his jacket and head for the door. 2 years, and I was desperate. 2 years of love, support, and commitment, and I was the problem. "Marcus, wait." I started, but he was already gone, leaving. Me standing in my candlelit apartment with pasta getting cold and tears streaming down my face. That night, I cried until I had no tears left. I questioned everything about myself. wondering if I really was as clingy and desperate as he made me feel. I deleted his number from my phone, threw away the gift I'd bought him, and promised myself I'd never let anyone make me feel small again. But the universe, it seems, had other plans. 3 weeks later, my manager called me into her office with news that would change everything. "Aaliyah, we're restructuring the department. I'm promoting you to senior HR manager, effective immediately. You'll be handling all recruitment and employee relations for the tech consulting division." I should have been thrilled. This was the promotion I'd been working toward for 3 years. Better salary, better title, more responsibility. Everything I'd dreamed of. But there was one small detail my manager forgot to mention until I was already signing the paperwork. Oh, and we just got a huge batch of applications from recent layoffs at Technova. Apparently, they're downsizing their entire development team. Some really qualified candidates in there. Technova, Marcus's company. My blood ran cold as the implications hit me. How many applicants are we talking about? About 30 developers, all looking for immediate placement. I'll forward you the list this afternoon so you can start scheduling interviews. I nodded, trying to keep my face neutral while my mind raced. There was no way Marcus would be on that list. He was senior level, had been with Technova for 4 years. They wouldn't lay him off. That afternoon, I opened the email with shaking hands. I scrolled through name after name, telling myself I was being paranoid, that there was no way, and there it was. Marcus Thompson, senior software developer, available immediately. My ex-boyfriend, the man who called me clingy and desperate, who broke my heart because I wanted to celebrate his birthday, was unemployed and applying to work at my company, where I was now the HR manager, where I would be conducting his interview. I stared at his application for what felt like hours, my hands trembling as I read through his carefully crafted resume and cover letter. The same hands that had held mine, the same mind that had convinced me I was too much, was now asking me for a job. The irony was so thick I could taste it. As I sat there in my office looking at his name on my screen, something shifted inside me. The hurt and self-doubt that had consumed me for weeks suddenly transformed into something else entirely. Something that felt a lot like power. I picked up my phone and called my assistant. "Hey, Sarah? I need you to schedule some interviews for next week. I'll send you the list of candidates. Make sure to put Marcus Thompson first thing Monday morning." As I hung up, I couldn't help but smile. Marcus wanted space? Well, he was about to get all the space he could handle, right across from my desk, begging for a job. This was going to be interesting. Part 2. Planning Revenge. The weekend before. Marcus's interview felt like the longest 2 days of my life. I spent hours researching every detail of his professional background, cross-referencing his LinkedIn with company records, and planning exactly how this was going to go down. You see, when someone crushes your heart and calls you desperate, they don't expect you to bounce back stronger. They certainly don't expect to find themselves sitting across from you, literally begging for their livelihood. I pulled out his application again, studying every line with the precision of a surgeon. His employment history, his skills, his references. I knew it all by heart now. More importantly, I knew his weaknesses. Marcus had always been arrogant about his coding abilities, but I remembered the late-night phone calls where he'd complain about struggling with newer frameworks. I remembered him getting defensive when colleagues questioned his methods. And I definitely remembered him lying on his resume about that certification he never actually completed. But this wasn't just about professional payback. This was personal. I called my best friend Zara that Saturday night, needing someone to process this insane situation with. "Wait, hold up," she said, nearly choking on her wine. "Your ex who called you clingy is now applying to work at your company, and you're his potential boss?" "Not potential. I am his boss if he gets hired, and that's a very big if." Aaliyah, please tell me you're not thinking what I think you're thinking. I was quiet for a moment, staring out my apartment window at the city lights. He made me question everything about myself, Z. He made me feel like I was too much, like my love was suffocating instead of supportive. For months, I wondered if he was right. But now you know he wasn't. Now I know he was projecting his own insecurities onto me. And now I have the power to show him exactly what too much really looks like. The plan started forming in my mind that night. It wasn't about being cruel, it was about justice. It was about taking back the power he'd stolen from me when he made me believe I was the problem. Monday morning arrived with unusual clarity. I dressed carefully, choosing my most professional blazer, the navy one that made me look authoritative and unshakable. I did my makeup with precision, every stroke calculated to project confidence. This wasn't about looking good for Marcus. This was about armor. I arrived at the office early, reviewing his file one more time. My assistant Sarah knocked on my door at exactly 8:45 a.m. Ms. Jackson, your 9 a.m. interview is here. Marcus Thompson? The sound of his name still made my stomach flip, but now it was anticipation rather than heartbreak. Give me 5 minutes, then send him in. I straightened my shoulders, took a deep breath, and prepared to face the man who'd shattered my self-esteem. The knock came at exactly 9 a.m. Come in. The door opened, and there he was. Marcus, in his best interview suit, carrying a leather portfolio that I recognized from our dating days. His confident smile began to form as he stepped into my office, probably preparing his usual charm offensive. Then he saw me. The color drained from his face so quickly I thought he might faint. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again like a fish gasping for air. The confident swagger he'd walked in with evaporated instantly. Aaliyah? His voice cracked on my name. I didn't stand up. I didn't smile. I simply gestured to the chair, across from my desk with the same professional courtesy I'd show any candidate. Please have a seat, Mr. Thompson. Thank you for coming in today. He stumbled to the chair, clearly trying to process what was happening. I could practically see the wheels turning in his head, trying to figure out how to handle this situation. Aaliyah, I had no idea you worked here. I mean, I knew you worked in HR, but I didn't know— It's Ms. Jackson in professional settings, I interrupted smoothly, opening his file. And yes, I was recently promoted to senior HR manager. I handle all hiring decisions for the tech consulting division. The implications hit him like a freight train. I watched as understanding dawned in his eyes, followed quickly by panic. Look, Aaliyah, Ms. Jackson, about what happened between us. This is a professional interview, Mr. Thompson. Our personal history has no bearing on this process. I looked up from his file, meeting his eyes directly. Unless, of course, you feel it might compromise your ability to work here? It was a perfect trap. If he said yes, he'd be admitting our relationship might affect his work performance. If he said no, he'd have to sit through whatever I had planned. No, of course not. I can be completely professional. Excellent. Let's begin then. I leaned, back in my chair, enjoying the way he squirmed. I've reviewed your application, and I have some concerns about your qualifications. His face went pale. Concerns? Yes. For instance, you claim expertise in React Native, but your portfolio shows primarily basic web development. Can you walk me through your experience with mobile application development? I watched him struggle, knowing full well that he'd inflated his skills on his resume. This wasn't even about revenge yet. This was just standard interview procedure. But the power dynamic made every question feel loaded. Well, I've worked with React extensively, and the principles are very similar. That's not what I asked. Mr. Thompson, do you have actual experience with React Native, or were you hoping to learn on the job? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The interview continued for 45 minutes. Every question I asked was legitimate. Every challenge I presented was standard practice. But I could see Marcus becoming more and more uncomfortable, realizing that his usual charm and good looks weren't going to carry him through this. "I have to ask," I said, closing his file. "Your resume mentions a certification in cloud architecture that I can't seem to verify. Could you clarify that for me?" He froze. We both knew he'd never completed that certification, despite claiming it for the past 2 years. In our relationship, I'd been the one encouraging him to actually finish it instead of just pretending. He had. There might be some delay in the verification system. The certification is legitimate. Mr. Thompson, are you lying on your resume? The question hung in the air like a guillotine. His face went through a spectrum of colors. Red, white, then a sickly green. "I can explain. I think we're done here." I stood up, extending my hand in the most professional dismissal possible. "Thank you for your time. We'll be in touch." He stood slowly, clearly trying to figure out if he should address our past or stick to professionalism. "Aaliyah, please. I really need this job. The layoffs at Technova, they were unexpected and I've got bills, rent." "Ms. Jackson," I corrected again. "And I understand the job market is competitive. That's exactly why we need candidates who are completely honest about their qualifications." He left my office looking like a man who'd just watched his future crumble. As the door closed behind him, I sat back down and allowed myself a small smile. But this was just the beginning. I spent the rest of the day crafting my strategy. Marcus needed this job. That much was obvious from his desperation. And I was going to give it to him. But not in the way he expected. I called him that evening, using the company phone so his caller ID would show our business number. "Marcus? This is Aaliyah Jackson from TechFlow Solutions. I wanted to follow up on your interview today." "Oh, hi Aaliyah. Ms. Jackson. Thank you for calling." "I'll be direct, Mr. Thompson. Your interview raised some red flags about your qualifications for the senior developer position you applied for." I heard his sharp intake of breath. "However, we do have an entry-level position available. The pay is significantly lower, and you'd be working under close supervision, but it would be a foot in the door." The silence stretched for almost 30 seconds. "Entry-level?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Yes. Given the discrepancies in your resume and your apparent lack of experience with the technologies we use, it's the only position I can justify offering. But I have 4 years of experience." Experience. That doesn't seem to align with our needs. "This is a take-it-or-leave-it offer, Mr. Thompson. The starting salary is $45,000, about half of what you were making at Technova. You'd report directly to me, and there would be a 6-month probationary period." I could practically hear him calculating his options. Pride versus necessity. His ego versus his rent. I need to think about it." "Of course. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. After that, we'll move forward with other candidates." As I hung up, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Complete and total control. Marcus, the man who called me clingy for wanting to spend time with him, was about to become my employee. The man who said I was desperate for showing him love was about to be desperate for my approval. Tomorrow, he would call and accept the position. I was certain of it, and then the real fun would begin. Part 3, Execution and Reaction. The call came at 8:47 a.m. the next morning. I let it ring 3 times before answering, savoring every second of his desperation. TechFlow Solutions, Aaliyah Jackson speaking. "Ms. Jackson, this is Marcus Thompson. I'd like to accept the position." His voice was different now, smaller, defeated. The arrogant confidence that used to irritate me was completely gone, replaced by the humble tone of someone who had no other choice. Excellent, Mr. Thompson. Your start date is Monday. Please arrive at 8 a.m. sharp for orientation. And Marcus? I paused, letting the weight of his new reality settle in. Welcome to the team. That weekend, I prepared his workspace with meticulous care. I assigned him a cubicle in the most visible part of the office, right where everyone could see him, right where I could observe his every move from my glass-walled office. No corner desk, no privacy, no dignity. Monday morning arrived like Christmas morning for me. I watched from my office as Marcus entered the building, looking around nervously in his discount store button-down shirt. Gone were the designer clothes he used to wear when we dated. Unemployment had clearly taken its toll. I called him into my office at exactly 9 a.m. Good morning, Marcus. Please sit down. I gestured to the same chair where he'd squirmed during his interview. Before we get you started, I want to go over some ground rules. He nodded eagerly, pulling out a notebook like an overeager student. First, all your work will be reviewed by me personally before submission. Given your limited experience with our technology stack, I need to ensure quality control. I watched his jaw tighten, but he nodded. Second, I expect detailed daily reports on your progress. Every task, every challenge, every solution. I want complete transparency about your work process. Of course, Ms. Jackson. Third, and this is important, I expect the same level of communication we discussed during your interview. Prompt responses to emails, immediate availability when I need updates, and complete professional courtesy at all times. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. I was describing the exact behavior he'd called clingy when we were together. Now it was his job requirement. I understand completely. Excellent. Your first assignment is to review our existing client management system and provide recommendations for improvements. I'll need your initial assessment by end of day. As he left my office, I couldn't help but smile. This was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, I implemented what I privately called the clingy treatment. Every interaction was perfectly professional, but I made sure Marcus experienced exactly what he'd accused me of being. I sent him emails at all hours, expecting immediate responses. Just checking in on the progress of the Johnson account modifications. Please confirm receipt and provide status update. I scheduled impromptu meetings throughout his day. Marcus, can you come to my office? I need an update on that code review. I required detailed explanations for every decision he made. I noticed you chose this particular framework. Can you walk me through your reasoning? I want to understand your thought process completely. The beautiful part was that everything I did was completely legitimate management practice. I was being thorough, hands-on, and detail-oriented, exactly the kind of boss any reasonable employee would respect. But Marcus knew what I was doing. I watched him grow more and more frustrated as the days passed. During our daily check-ins, I could see the recognition in his eyes every time I asked for just a quick update or requested he stay a few minutes longer to discuss his work. Is there anything else you need from me today? He asked after one particularly intense review session. Actually, yes. I'd like you to walk me through the entire user authentication process you've been working on. I want to make sure I understand every component. His hands clenched slightly. We went over this yesterday in detail. I know, but I want to be thorough. You understand the importance of clear communication, don't you? The look he gave me was pure recognition. He knew exactly what those words meant. But the real masterpiece came 3 weeks into his employment. Marcus had been working late most evenings, trying to prove himself and catch up on the skills he'd lied about having. I made sure to check in on him regularly. Working late again, Marcus? Just trying to finish up the database optimization project. I appreciate your dedication. You know, it reminds me of someone who used to put a lot of effort into the things they cared about. He looked up from his computer, and for a moment, the professional facade cracked. Aaliyah, can we talk? Not as boss and employee, Just, can we talk? I considered this for a moment, then nodded. 5 minutes. He stood up, running his hands through his hair in that familiar gesture I remembered so well. I know what you're doing. I'm managing my team effectively. You're getting back at me for what happened between us. I leaned against his cubicle wall, looking down at him with the same expression he used to give me when he was about to call me clingy. Am I being too much, Marcus? Too demanding? Too clingy? His face went white as the words hit home. Because if my management style is making you uncomfortable, you're welcome to find employment elsewhere. I hear the job market is quite competitive right now. He slumped back in his chair, defeated. I can't quit. You know I can't quit. Then I suggest you focus on meeting my expectations. After all, clear communication and dedication are such important qualities in the workplace. That night, I went home feeling something I hadn't felt since our breakup. Complete satisfaction, but the universe wasn't done with its sense of humor. 2 days later, Marcus requested a meeting with me. He sat in that familiar chair across from my desk, but this time, something was different about his posture. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Not just for the breakup, though that was handled terribly. I owe you an apology for making you think you were the problem when you never were. I felt my carefully constructed professional mask slip slightly. These past few weeks, working for you, seeing how competent and successful you are, I realized something. You weren't clingy, Aaliyah. You were invested. You cared about us, about me, in a way I wasn't mature enough to handle. He took a shaky breath. I called you desperate because I was scared of how much you meant to me. I called you clingy because I didn't know how to be vulnerable enough to match your level of commitment. And I broke up with you because I was a coward who couldn't handle being with someone who was so much better than me. The words hung in the air between us. Part of me wanted to savor this moment of victory, but another part, a part I'd tried to bury, felt something else entirely. What you're doing to me now, he continued, making me experience what it feels like to need someone who holds all the power. I deserve it. But more than that, it's made me understand what I put you through. I sat quietly for a long moment, processing his words. When you called me clingy, I said finally, you made me question everything about myself. You made me wonder if loving someone fully was wrong, if caring deeply was something to be ashamed of. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry. And when you called me desperate, you took something beautiful, my willingness to fight for us, and made it feel pathetic. Tears were forming in his eyes now. I was the desperate one, Aaliyah. I was desperate to push you away before you realized you deserved better. I looked at this man who had broken my heart, who was now broken himself, sitting in my office begging for forgiveness. The revenge I'd planned so carefully had worked perfectly. He understood now what it felt like to be at someone else's mercy, to need someone who had no obligation to care about your feelings. But somewhere in the midst of my victory, I realized something unexpected. I didn't need his apology to know my worth anymore. Marcus, I said, standing up and walking around my desk, I accept your apology. Not because you've earned forgiveness, but because holding on to anger was keeping me small. He looked up at me with surprise. You're a good employee when you're honest about your capabilities. I think you can be successful here if you continue to grow professionally. What does this mean for us? There is no us, Marcus. There's my successful career, my amazing life, and my bright future. And there's you, learning to be the kind of person who deserves those things. I walked back to my desk and sat down. Now, about that database optimization project. I'll need your final report by Friday. As he left my office, I realized that the best revenge wasn't making him suffer. It was becoming so successful, so confident, and so completely over him that his opinion of me no longer mattered. 3 months later, Marcus had become a decent employee. He worked hard, communicated clearly, and never complained about my management style. He learned the skills he'd lied about and actually became valuable to the team. And me? I got promoted again, this time to regional HR director. The girl he called Clingy was now managing 3 offices and a team of 50 people. The woman he called desperate was now the person other companies tried to poach with increasingly attractive offers. Funny how that works out. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.